to secure insurance. It goes way beyond the pale. I would ask my colleagues to vote against this rule and protect the right of a woman to choose and the dignity of all people in this nation to make their decisions over their lives. I'm saddened that we're here today discussing such an issue. I yield back.
Has expired. The chair lays before the House an enrolled rule.
H.R. 2832, an act to extend the generalized system of preferences and for other purposes.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to recognize the gentlewoman from Tennessee for 1 minute.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We all know that the Obamacare bill allows for both the implicit and explicit taxpayer funding of abortion, and we all know that the executive order signed by the President is not worth the paper that it was written on. It repeats the accounting gimmick that allows for federal subsidies to go to insurance plans that cover abortion, and that's why we need to pass the Protect Life Act, which would apply the principles of the Hyde Amendment to every component of Obamacare. The Protect Life Act eliminates that accounting gimmick and ensures that Americans are not forced to pay an abortion surcharge, if you will, in order to get a health care plan. It ensures state laws are not preempted by federal law. This is the right move, the right bill. Americans deserve to have this assurance, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I'm very pleased to yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Washington, Mr. McDermott.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, this is nothing more or less than an attack on poor women. I stood beside the bed of a couple of women in the Buffalo General Hospital in 1963 and watched them die because of back alley abortions. I was in the state legislature in 1970 when we in the state of Washington granted, by referendum, vote of all the people, the right of women to have an abortion. Now the question is, how do you get it paid for? Well, when I came to Seattle, if you wanted an abortion, what you did was you went down and bought a ticket to Japan. You flew to Japan, had an abortion, had a day of shopping in Tokyo while you made sure that you were okay medically, and then you came home. Rich women never had any problem. But the women that I stood next to as they died and left 12 kids without mothers were poor. And that's what this is really all about. It is an attack by the right wing who consider that they wrap themselves in theological raiment and then attack poor women. Christ wouldn't have done that.
Has expired. The gentlewoman from North Carolina.
I will reserve, Madam Speaker.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I have no further speakers, and I'd ask of the gentlelady if she's prepared to close.
I am.
Thank you all very much, Madam Speaker. How much time?
The gentleman from Florida has 5½ minutes remaining, and the gentlewoman has 2.
I won't take all of that time, Madam Speaker, but I do wish to assert into this debate. It's been said often on the other side, and my distinguished friend from the Rules Committee made the point that people came here and said that jobs were more important than life. I didn't hear anybody say that, and I don't believe anybody believes that. But what I do believe that most of us understand is that this is not going to become the law, and therefore what we are doing in the final analysis is a waste of time, and we could have been trying to do, as we have not done in this session of Congress, address the subject of jobs. Madam Speaker, what we have before us is an extremely flawed bill, and contrary to their self-professed commitment to an open process, this particular provision being considered is under a closed rule. Furthermore, I'd also like to call into question how it's possible for us to consider this bill on the House floor when its sponsor, Mr. Pitts of Pennsylvania, failed to provide a statement citing Congress's constitutional authority to enact it. Mr. Pitts' statement of constitutional authority for the Protect Life Act cites no provision of the Constitution or any amendment to the Constitution. Therefore, I'd like to request of he or members on the other side to share with us the basis for this bill, which violates the fundamental right to privacy upheld by the Supreme Court. It restricts women's access to health care and imposes further regulations on health insurance coverage. It's clear that the Protect Life Act lacks both constitutional and moral integrity. And let me insert additionally some feelings that have been expressed in public, and I take the prerogative of using them here on the floor. H.R. 358 comes on top of votes by the Republican-led House to eliminate all federal funding for Title X, the National Family Planning Program, to eliminate funding for all other reproductive health programs offering breast and cervical cancer exams, well woman and primary health care and family planning to prevent unintended pregnancies and to reduce the need for abortion. They've led measures that eliminate requirements in health care reform covering maternal health care, mammograms, breastfeeding support, and other essential health services. In addition, they've made it impossible for women to speak to their doctors about abortion using internet-based telemedicine. Now, these are just a few examples. The Republicans are full of fuzzy facts. I set my day almost every day, Madam Speaker, by reading the cartoon after other parts of the newspaper get fuzzy. And the cat in that particular cartoon constantly comes up with fuzzy facts. If you put all the fuzzy facts together and all the things that the Republican majority has done, including Tea Party-led efforts to gut Environmental Protection Agency rules that keeps the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the environment in which we live safe. They've done efforts to virtually eliminate child nutrition, and I can't believe that 20 years I'm here and I hear Republicans talk about cutting out the Head Start program, the one documented program that has benefited American society over and above what was thought. They've done things to eliminate programs to help the unemployed to survive, to slash Medicaid and Medicare, to effectively abrogate any social contract and tear to shreds any social safety net. I have to ask, exactly whose lives are we protecting here? I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, opposition to taxpayer funding for elective abortion is bipartisan, bicameral, and supported by the majority of the American people. We all know that. I'd like to point out to my colleagues across the aisle, when they keep saying we need to be talking about jobs, is when the Democrats took control of the Congress in 2007, the unemployment rate was 4.6%. Between then and the time that Republicans regained control in the House this January, the unemployment rate rose to over 9%. 6.9 million more Americans became unemployed during that period of time. I'd also like to point out to my colleague that the constitutional authority for this bill, for 358, is in the congressional record. He knows it's required when the bill is introduced. Madam Speaker, the American people are probably a little confused by listening to this debate because they hear two very conflicting stories. I would like to urge them to go to thomas.gov. H.R. 358 is only 9 pages long. It's very simple to read. It's not like what they call the Affordable Care Act, which we had to get passed before we would know what was in it. There's nothing more important, Madam Speaker, than protecting voiceless, unborn children and their families from the travesty of abortion. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I urge my colleagues to put aside all this rhetoric that has been spoken of in this debate today and vote for life by voting in favor of this rule and the underlying bill. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The resolution.
Speaker, I ask for a vote.
From North Carolina. Does the gentlewoman ask for the yeas and nays?
Ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
So it's the first of two roll call votes in the House this afternoon. Members right now voting on the rule for debating this bill preventing health insurance plans under the new health care law from covering insurance services. We will, in a couple of moments, open our phone lines to get your take on this legislation. After this vote, votes on an amendment to a bill debated earlier that blocks the EPA from regulating certain industrial emissions. Now, this amendment would force the EPA to consider the potential reduction in the number of respiratory illness-related work absences when issuing new regulations for industrial boilers, incinerators, and the like as required in the measure. That will be a 15-minute vote following this. Right now, though, Jason Dick of Roll Call is joining us to give us some background on the abortion insurance coverage bill members are voting on. Why are House Republicans bringing up this bill dealing with state health insurance exchanges and abortions?
Well, part of the reason is that this is a part of their Pledge to America that they made last year during the campaign for the 2010 midterm elections. They promised to bring up several measures that address federal funding and prohibiting federal funding from being used for abortion, and they're following through.
And why are supporters saying the bill is necessary?
Part of the reason that they're arguing that the bill is necessary is as part of the health care reform law signed into law by President Obama last year, there was a delicate compromise on federal funding. Some anti-abortion Democrats had demanded that the law be written in a way so that federal funds wouldn't be used directly for any kind of abortion services. They didn't reopen the legislation during debate, but what happened as part of the compromise was that President Obama signed an executive order, and what proponents of the legislation are arguing is that it's necessary to put this into law because an executive order doesn't have the same force of law.
Who is opposed to this measure, and what are their points against it?
Most abortion rights legislators or lawmakers are pretty vehemently opposed to this. That makes up a fairly significant chunk of the Democratic caucus, as you'll see a fairly partisan vote on this. What they're arguing is that this effectively takes away an important chunk of women's health coverage from the insurance exchanges, because right now the way that the health care law is written, a woman can elect to have a health care plan that does provide abortion services as long as the money is segregated and there is money that goes from a pot that doesn't include any federal funds for abortion. This would effectively take away that option because it would prohibit any insurance exchange plan from receiving federal funds if they offer any abortion services at all. So the abortion rights lawmakers and proponents of abortion rights are arguing that this is one way of chipping away at a woman's right to choose.
What are the bill's prospects in the House today?
It looks like it will pass. That it'll probably pass with I wouldn't say a comfortable margin, but certainly more. They won't have to open any votes, I don't think, to whip in order to get to 218. Whether it goes up to 230, 240, 250 is something to be seen. But right now, the Democratic leadership is not whipping against the bill because they don't see that it has any chance of getting a vote in the Senate or being signed into law. So they're not actively whipping against it. So some Democrats have sort of a free vote on this one.
What other abortion-related bills are House Republicans contemplating bringing up for votes?
Well, right. This one sort of came, I wouldn't say out of thin air, but it certainly came out a little unexpectedly. Right now, I mean, in the spring, the House passed a few abortion-related bills, including one by Representative Chris Smith, that still haven't received any kind of attention in the Senate. So right now, it's unclear what might be on the horizon.
And tell us again about the Senate. How is today's bill and some of the others that are coming up, how are they expected to fare?
It's unlikely that this bill would even receive any kind of floor attention unless, of course, it comes up as some sort of amendment. The legislative clock is getting pretty sparse, or the calendar is getting pretty packed, and there's not a whole lot of time left in the calendar year or the legislative year. So it's unlikely that it would come up in the Senate at all. And even if it were to come up in the Senate, it's not likely to pass. And even if in the unlikely event that it would pass, President Obama yesterday said that he would veto the legislation.
Jason Dick is the House editor at Roll Call. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And now to your phone calls on this legislation, 202-585-3885 for Republicans. Democrats, your number to call is 202-585-3886. Independents, your line is 202-585-3887. First call is Glenda in Lakeland, Florida, Republican caller.
Yes. Yes. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes. This is Glenda Noggle. I'm a mother of 5 children, and of course, I love children, but I do believe there are so many young women who do not know there is a way to, if they do not feel they wish to take on this responsibility, or they do not feel they're capable, there are so many options. And I've been praying about this, and I know that there are people of all faiths who do love children, and there are so many young women that don't know what to do, and they're in a part of their life where they think they don't know what a choice to make. But I just wanted to let my voice be heard for the children.
And we thank you for calling in. Next to Sharon in Scottsboro, is that Alabama?
Yes, sir.
Calling on the Democrats line.
Yes, sir. I'm opposed to this this bill. I had an abortion. I know what it's like to make that decision, and it was a life-threatening decision. I don't think that Congress should be involved in making those decisions for women. I think that we need the health care reform to educate younger people in not having children at an early age, and sex education and things like that. They've clearly overstepped their bounds. It's unconstitutional. It's not fair to women. They're trying to tell us what to do with our bodies. And I had 2 children when I had my abortion, and my doctor said it was medically necessary. I didn't want to have it because I don't believe in abortion at all. I love children. But they clearly are overstepping their bounds, and I think they need to butt out, and they need to pass this bill for the health care reform, and they need to start focusing on getting jobs for people. I'm disabled, and I'm going to college so that I can get off disability. I don't want to be on disability. I don't want to be on Medicaid. I don't want to be on anything except for what I can pay for it myself. You know what I'm saying? So I think that they really need to stop this pro-life. It's already a bill in place for taking care of that, and I don't think anyone wants anyone to have an abortion. We don't want taxpayers to pay for it, but I think that they're clearly overstepping their bounds.
Thanks, Thanks Sharon. On to Linda in Nashville, Tennessee, on the others line.
Hi, good afternoon. This is really puzzling to me. The Republicans got in office stating that they was running on jobs. They have not brought out any bills whatsoever to concentrate on jobs. They are so worried about the women's vagina instead of being worried about the American people as far as jobs. It is uncomfortable to me that these Republicans always attacking females. I do not care if you're a Republican or Democrat or independent woman. There is no woman in this world in their right mind should vote for a Republican. They lied and they deceived to get into office, stating that, oh, they were so worried about getting jobs for the American people. They are worried about one man's job, and that's President Obama, but they are so concerned about trying to hurt the whole country to get rid of one man's job, and they are so worried about a woman's vagina.
Next to the Republicans line, Beth in Honolulu.
Yes, hi. I was calling in favor of this bill. I am appalled at the fact that an unborn child has no voice in this country. Young women that have babies and if they ever have an abortion, they live with that the rest of their lives. We have faith in God that He's bringing in life to this world that was. We have faith in the Lord and not in Congress. They have no right ever to even talk about an unborn child. That's God's doing. And I think it's just appalling what's going on with the country. I'm sorry, my first call. And I am not an activist. I've never gotten involved in my lifetime. I believe in live and let live. But this has gone way, way, way too far to the core
and thanks
of the
for
meaning
your
of
call.
life.
Thanks for your call this afternoon. Next to Lester in Winnemucca, Nevada, on the Democrats line.
Hey, thanks for having me call and let me on here to talk. I just find it interesting that a bunch of men seem to think that they have a right to sit around and tell a woman what she can do with her body. And I don't even think men should even be part of the discussion. And the lady that called earlier was right. You know, the Republicans got elected on the jobs thing. We're going to put everybody to work, and they've done nothing to put anybody to work. Now we've got a plan before them that they're going to try to not do anything with. Again, we're just throwing sand in the gears of government and basically just grinding government to a halt. You know, these guys get elected saying, hey, government's not working, government doesn't work. And then they go to Washington and they do everything they can to make sure it doesn't work.
Next to the others line, Donald calling from Glendive, Montana. Go ahead, Donald.
Yes, I'm watching that on TV live about that abortion insurance coverage.
What do you think about it?
What I think about that? Government's got their hands into way too many things as it is, and they need to back out of a lot of the issues that they're into.
And that's
they need to kill that bill immediately, because I'm totally against that in the first place, because who gives anybody the right to take another person's life? This country's got enough black marks against it, and we need to stop what's going on in this country as it is.
And thanks for calling. A quick reminder that the House will go into recess this afternoon at about 2:30. They will then reconvene at 3:45 for a joint meeting with the Senate to hear remarks from the President of South Korea, Lee Myung-bak. President Lee is in the U.S. for a 5-day visit. He was officially welcomed at the White House this morning. He and President Obama wrapped up a news conference about 1 o'clock or so. A little bit later today, it will be a state dinner in honor of President Lee and his wife, and we will have live coverage of his joint address to Congress here on C-SPAN. That'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern. We will also carry the state dinner, which starts at about 6:30 on our companion network, C-SPAN 3. Back to your phone calls on the abortion insurance coverage bill that the House is voting on right now. Next call is Kim on the Republicans line in New York.
Yes, hi. As a mom of teenagers, teenage boys, mind you, I'm really, I just can't believe what the government is trying to do here, to take our taxpayer money and think that they could pay, make it part of the insurance for people is really just against everything that I've kind of taught my children. Kids and adults need to be responsible, and it all begins with abstinence. And if they were just taught the right thing right from the start, we wouldn't be in this situation, and we wouldn't be spending so much time and effort and arguing back and forth with this.
Chander is calling from Muncie, Indiana, on the Democrats line.
Yeah, I honestly think that the government needs to stay out of that. We don't have the power to give or take away life, so it's really just not in the hands of the government to do that. For them to take somebody's hard-working money to pay for somebody to take a life from somebody, I think that's really unfair. And I think they should pass the bill that does not support that for abortions to even happen. If they don't want the baby, they shouldn't lay down and make the baby, and they wouldn't have that problem. If they want to help, they should educate these young people to get their mind right so they don't have this kind of situation to deal with.
On our line for others, Nick in Detroit, Michigan.
Hi. I think the taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that kind of stuff, but it's our human right to be able to choose, their human right to be able to choose whether or not they would like an abortion or not. So, we shouldn't have to pay for it, but it's their right to choose, and I'm not for it. I think it's a little messed up, but in some circumstances I feel that it is necessary, and that's their right to choose. So, and that's what I have to say.
Donna is a Republican calling from York, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I believe in them repealing this abortion, that we the people should not pay for it, that if they want it, they should pay for it themselves. That's how I feel about this abortion law. And the government should stay out of it, too.
On the Democrats line, Kathleen in Hammond, Indiana.
Yes, hello. Real quick, this is the 6th time that Congress has brought this up. 6 times there is, read my lips, no federal fund for abortion. It is none of their business. Virginia Fox is insane. This is crazy. They have no right to tell me or my daughter, my granddaughter, anybody what to do. They are mandating women to what they want, and it's crazy, insane. It's got to be stopped. There is no federal fund for abortion. How many times do I have to understand that? They are chipping away at our rights little by little, these crazy Republicans and that crazy Virginia Fox. This is insane already, and people start speaking up because this is crazy. They are insane, and before long we will be walking in lockstep to what they want, and all our rights will be taken away because they are insane, insane, insane. Thank you.
On our others line, Deontay from Kansas City, Missouri.
Hello. Thank you for having me online. I just wanted to say it's ridiculous that the government is trying to get involved with anything to do with abortions, especially men. Women should have that choice by themselves to do whatever they want to do with their own bodies. One other thing I wanted to say was that we have sex not only to have babies. We do it for entertainment because we're humans, and that's what we do. So people have to understand that. And yes, sometimes people accidentally get wrapped up in a pregnancy. But someone like me, a 19-year-old male, when that happens and you're just trying to have fun and enjoy your life just like everyone else in this country has done, you don't always want to get pregnant. And I'm against abortion. If my girlfriend decides she wanted to do that so that she can have a better life for herself, I'm going to let her do it.
Mark from Chino, California is calling.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I think the majority of the Republicans' views are Christian-based, and the Democrats are fighting for human rights, the right of the woman to vote whether she wants to do something or not, and they need to leave the religion out of it. And if they want to bring jobs back into our country, there's plenty of jobs right now that illegals are possessing, and that's the reason why we don't have jobs. They're good-paying jobs, warehouse jobs. In my city, especially, there's like 4 buildings. I've already sent a complaint to the Homeland Security because that's the way to get us back to work. You want to create more jobs, you bring more jobs in, but they're going to be filled by illegals. That's a position that needs to be addressed right now in our country so we can go back to work tomorrow, next week. And that's the real issue. This issue is mostly going to be about religion and human right to vote.
Appreciate it, Sam. Next to Pat in Pittsburgh. Pat's calling on the Republicans line. Pat, are you there?
Hello, this is Sam.
Go ahead, Sam. Sorry about that. You're in Bishop, Virginia?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for calling.
Yes, sir. I'm calling on regard to a past girlfriend that I had. Before we was married, she lost a child in labor. And in that regard, the doctors wrote it up as an abortion. Now, under this act, she wouldn't be covered. And that, you know, it's unfair to her, and plus it's not a very religious act, you know, so it's on both sides there. And as far as jobs, I live in Southwest Virginia, and other than coal and natural gas, there's not a whole lot of jobs out here. I mean, the whole area is based on coal and natural gas. It has been for the last 1897, I think they found coal in Pocahontas, Virginia. So that's how long that it's been based that way. And all the other factories and stuff, the local government blocks it from coming in because, you know, they want the area as a peaceful retirement community. And that hurts us young people because in order to find jobs, we have to leave home and leave our parents and leave everything that we growed up having.
Thanks, Sam. On to the Democrats line with Lauren in DeKalb, Indiana.
Hello.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Hi. I just have, it's really short and sweet. I don't think it is right for Congress to be telling us women, what we can and cannot do with our bodies. I'm currently in college right now, and so we know our options. It is everywhere around us. You go on the campus, and you see posters saying, here are your options. So we know what we can and cannot do, what we should and we shouldn't do. So it's not Congress's choice on this. It should be strictly up to us. Either way, we are going to be the mothers of those children. We're supposed to be the ones to make the call what we feel is best for them, and Congress going and telling us that we don't have that right anymore is just wrong. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for calling in. Jesse on the others line in Sulphur, Louisiana.
Yes, sir. I'm pretty sure that if every one of the Republicans in the House right now were to get pregnant, then we might not have the same situation that we're in right now. And as far as the right to life, I don't think that the sanctity of life would be taken quite as seriously if you thought about the fact that, you know, you're alive. Of course you think that there's a sanctity in that. Completely ridiculous. At the same time, I mean, if a child or an unborn baby, in quotes, obviously, if it's a human being, why is it not counted in the census?
And we'll squeeze in one more call. This will be David in Barnville, Ohio.
Yeah, how you doing?
On the Republicans line, go ahead, David.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I'd like to share the fact that I think what a lot of Americans fail to realize is that we're not following the money trail. The Republicans really have no financial stake in different bills like this. The Democrats, you know, they're tied in with abortion or, you know, possibly even pharmaceuticals.
Thanks for your call, David. Down to the floor.
On this vote, the ayes are 248 and the nays are 173. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Pursuant to House Resolution 419 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 2250. Will the gentlelady from Missouri, Mrs. Emerson, kindly take the chair?
This is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 2250, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to provide additional time for the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency to issue achievable standards for industrial, commercial, and institutional boilers, process heaters, and incinerators, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Wednesday, October 12, 2011, a request for a recorded vote on Amendment 22 printed in the congressional record by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, had been postponed. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, the unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment 22 printed in the congressional record offered by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. Clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 22, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Cohen of Tennessee.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
So we have the House now voting on an amendment that would force the EPA to consider the potential reduction in the number of respiratory illness-related work absences when issuing new regulations for industrial boilers, incinerators, and devices like that, as required in a measure that members debated earlier that blocks the EPA from regulating certain industrial emissions. As you heard, this is a 15-minute vote. While this is underway, House Speaker John Boehner told reporters earlier today that Republicans had ushered through a number of bills in the House that would help the economy. This is during his weekly legislative briefing this morning. He also said that the administration wasn't serious about pushing its jobs plan through Congress.
Morning, everyone. Republicans remained squarely focused on jobs, and once again this week we've passed several bills aimed at creating a better environment for job creation and putting Americans back to work. Despite long delays, the Senate yesterday approved 3 free trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea. Those measures are now ready for the President's signature. The House has passed numerous bills to stop excessive regulations that are threatening the creation of jobs, and 2 more of those bills will be passed this week. We've also passed several bills to increase American energy production, to create jobs, and to lower American energy cost. And Dave Camp and the members of the Ways and Means Committee are working on a bill to reform the tax code that would lower rates for individuals and corporations while broadening the base and closing loopholes. We're doing all these things because we said we would. They're all part of our plan for America's job creators, a plan that we outlined in May. And we've worked on many of these bills before we actually put the plan together, but a real focus since May on getting the American people back to work and creating a better environment for job creation in our country. It's a serious plan. Some of the ideas have bipartisan support, and we've made it clear for months that we're willing to sit down and work with the President on many of these ideas. Well, listen, the President's taken a different approach. As one of the Washington newspapers reported yesterday, getting his jobs bill passed in Congress, quote, was never really part of the plan for the White House. It was about politics. Well, the President yesterday said he wouldn't take no for an answer. Listen, the President's first stimulus bill planned or failed to keep unemployment below 8%, as he argued. Nearly 3 years later, with 9.1% unemployment, the President really has shown that he doesn't understand how private sector job growth really happens. Listen, I've run a small business. I know how to create jobs. I've met a payroll. And the fact is, the President's plan, in our view, will not work as he's laid it out there. So I would tell the President and challenge the President, take yes for an answer. Listen, a month ago, Republicans outlined areas where we thought we could find common ground. While a bipartisan majority in the Senate opposed his plan to raise taxes on American job creators, we can find common ground on the barriers to job creation in our country. We passed the trade agreements this week, and the House will soon take another step by making permanent the 3% withholding provision from the President's jobs plan. We've offered to work with him to help small businesses, to provide tax relief and improve and repair our infrastructure. Listen, the American families and small businesses are still asking the question, where are the jobs? We've extended our hand and offered to work with the President, but the President has chose to campaign instead of govern. I think it's time for the White House to stop the campaigning, start listening, and working with bipartisan members of Congress to do what the American people expect of us. Find common ground and move ahead.
Mr. Speaker, a new poll shows that the American people actually favor the President's plan by a 2-to-1 margin. What do you say to those people?
I think there are parts of the President's plan where we can, in fact, find common ground. We'll continue to work with him. I think that we've had our plan out there for months, and I would hope the President would give us the same consideration that we're giving to those parts of his plan that we agree with.
Yeah, but they're saying they approve the overall plan, and you're saying no to it. It's not moving.
Listen, we've had a plan, and we've had the plan for months. We've continued to work this plan that we believe that really will help create a better environment for job creation and help get the American people back to work.
Speaker, I know you're following the super committee very closely. Then last week you said you expect them to achieve results, but how do you think it's going? Do you think it's really a sure thing that they'll get there, particularly since Democrats seem to be insisting on revenues?
Listen, the so-called super committee has a big job to do. They know it, we know it, and no one expected this would occur without some difficulty. But the conversations continue, and I expect they will continue, because I believe that an outcome and a result is essential to reduce the debt burden on the American people and to show the markets that we're serious about dealing with our own problems.
This morning, Senator Corker of Tennessee said, quote, the only constructive thing that's going to happen between now and 2012 is a super committee deal. Do you agree with that?
I would hope that that's not the case. I think our country has big challenges. I think the American people expect us to work together to find common ground. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that.
When you say a result for the super committee, Mr. Speaker, how do you define that? What is a result in your opinion?
As outlined in the legislation that set it up.
1.2.
1.2 to $1.5 trillion worth of deficit reduction. It's critically important.
Why spend time today on the Protect Life Act, this abortion bill, if it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate? It's not a jobs bill.
Well, we've done 4 or 5 solid job creation bills this week. And this bill was part of our Pledge to America. We're keeping our word to the American people, and we're going to do it.
What is your preference on how you're going to move forward on the appropriations bills? Are you going to use an omnibus as a vehicle, or are you going to break it down into smaller pieces?
Well, I've been reluctant to even consider the idea of an omnibus appropriation bill. A lot of conversations going on amongst the appropriators and, frankly, some at the leadership level, trying to come to an agreement on the 302B allocations for each of the appropriation subcommittees. I would hope that we could reach an agreement on those spending levels for each of those subcommittees soon, so that those appropriate chairmen and ranking members can sit down and begin to work through some of those bills. But no decision has been made in terms of exactly how we're going to proceed.
Follow up on your answer on the super committee, you said that 1.2 to 1.5 trillion. Does that mean you've given up on something on the order of the $4 trillion grand bargain that you were negotiating with the President?
Well, it depends on. People can add up a lot of different numbers. You know, you can take the overseas contingency account, which is about $1 trillion worth of savings as a result of the drawdown of our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's already going to happen. And so I'm not, some people want to put that into the overall number. Some want to take the number that we've already done, $1.2 trillion worth of discretionary savings, and add it to the number. So you can get to a $4 or $5 trillion number if you're able to meet your $1.5 trillion goal for the super committee this fall.
Are you any closer to finding common ground with the Senate on the balanced budget amendment, and are you picking up any steam on that, and how soon do you think that could come to the floor?
Well, I think there's a lot of discussion about on the House side about the balanced budget amendment, the need to have a real enforcement mechanism on government spending. 48 states have such an amendment as part of their constitution, and many of us feel that the ultimate enforcement mechanism on government is to have a balanced budget requirement. As outlined in the Deficit Reduction Act, there will be a vote in the House and Senate after October 1st, but before the end of the year, on a balanced budget amendment. And I would hope that it would pass. Thanks, everybody.
House Speaker John Boehner at his weekly legislative briefing earlier today. The House is wrapping up votes on a bill blocking the EPA's regulation of factory emissions. General debate and final passage coming up later tonight. We are also expecting general debate and votes on the abortion insurance coverage bill that members have been working on. Well, at 2:30, the House is expected to go into recess to prepare the chamber for a speech by the President of South Korea, Lee Myung-bak. Members will be reconvening at 3:45 Eastern for that joint meeting of the House and the Senate. The President is on a 5-day visit to the U.S. He was officially welcomed at the White House this morning. He and President Obama held a news conference earlier today, and a little bit later there will be a state dinner in honor of President Lee and his wife. We will have live coverage of his joint address to Congress, of course, here on C-SPAN, and we'll carry the state dinner, which will get underway at about 6:30 on our companion network, C-SPAN 3.
The yeas are 174, the nays are 250. The amendment is not adopted. Question is on the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rules, the committee rises. Kevin?
Oh, ma'am. Ms. Emerson. She got away. You got a report.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 2250. Pursuant to House Resolution 419, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 2250, and pursuant to House Resolution 419, reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is now on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to provide additional time for the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency to issue achievable standards for industrial, commercial, and institutional boilers, process heaters, and incinerators, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of H.R. 2250 is postponed.
You have anything else, Brian?
After consultation among the Speaker and the majority and minority leaders, and with their consent, the Chair announces that when the two Houses meet in joint meeting to hear an address by His Excellency Lee Myung-bak, President of the Republic of Korea, only the doors immediately opposite the Speaker and those immediately to his left and right will be open. No one will be allowed on the floor of the House who does not have the privilege of the floor of the House. Due to the large attendance that is anticipated, the rule regarding the privilege of the floor must be strictly enforced. Children of members will not be permitted on the floor. The cooperation of all members is requested. The practice of reserving seats prior to the joint meeting by placard will not be allowed. Members will reserve their seats by physical presence only following the security sweep of the chamber. Pursuant to the order of the House of Tuesday, October 11, 2011, the House stands in recess, subject to the call of the Chair.
So the House now is in recess for a joint meeting with the Senate to hear an address from the President of South Korea, who is in the U.S. on a 5-day visit. Members will reconvene at